A bit of background, the FRG-7 came about in about 1976. It was Yaesu's main general coverage receiver offering. In fact, there weren't a lot of general coverage receivers in this class at the time. It was made from about the late 70s through to the early 80s and featured the groundbreaking Wadley loop technique that allowed good dial resolution and good frequency stability all the way up to 30 megahertz. Both those were features lacking in most receivers of that time. I'll have more to say about the Wadley loop, including details on how it works, in a later video. The FRG-7 was many people's first really good receiver that they owned. It was the current model when a lot of people were trying CB radio and getting into shortwave listening and then amateur radio. It retailed for, in Australia, around $300 or $400, and there were various types. This one has the fine tuning control. Some of the earlier models did not. The thing about the FRG-7, unlike modern receivers, is the tuning process. You actually need to change 3 or 4 controls to change station, especially if they're on a very different frequency.
We never, because I don't think we were using it.
Down here is the band range. The receiver covers from just under 500 kilohertz up to 30 megahertz. A pre-selector control, a megahertz setting, and the main tuning control. This model also has a fine tuning adjustment. Right here is a lock LED. It's a bit counterintuitive because when the lock is on, it means that you're not actually tuned to anything. So you need to adjust it so that the lock light is off. If you have a look at the megahertz selection, here you're basically selecting the bands in 1 megahertz segment. So if you have a look in this window in the megahertz, you adjust the megahertz until, let's say, we want 27 megahertz. So there's 27 megahertz, and you'll notice the light has gone off. Then you've got the pre-select, but before that you need to make sure that the band switch is in the correct range. This band switch is for the pre-selector adjustment. So as you saw just then, it is. Just down here is the pre-select control that adjusts the pre-select adjustment. You might be able to see the top range is lit up. When you change the band switch, the different segments light up. There's 4 bands in total. So here we are at 27 megahertz. Tuned for maximum noise. Down here is the mode switch. We're on lower sideband. Now we'll adjust the main tuning control. Let's see if there's any activity on 27 megahertz CB. It's about channel 35 and 38 is quite popular.
Another sparrow.
Goose rings a bell, but there's a lot of gooses out there. Or geese, goose. But no, I've had this call sign since 82. Chuck a whiskey club.
And
The fine tuning control.
She's passed away, but she gave me the nickname of Sparrow, and so I've always stuck to it. 41 Division Sugar Whiskey 54 NZ. All the Hanlon Sparrow, so yeah, it's been with me for a long time.
If the frequency is a little bit off, then you adjust the dial set. That just moves the pointer, not the actual dial.
Yeah, I remember Sparrow,
I can't
mate.
say that I've heard anything over here either, but yeah. There used to be a guy down there in Victoria that I used to speak to many years ago, back in the 80s. He was a regular as clockwork on the old CB, and I basically think that, we're a lot older now and survived, and some of them didn't survive, and we should be thankful that we're some of us survived.
Oh yeah, Sparrow, Goose, Wombat, there was a load of them. They were on in the 70s and 80s, weren't they?
Tone
Yeah, they
control,
may have passed away by now.
narrow, then normal, and then low, which is like a top cut. Most of the time you'd keep it in
Yeah,
low.
I can hear you nice and clear today, Moz. Got no noise at all.
It's just before 3 p.m, so we might have a listen at some other frequencies. We try 14 or 15 megahertz. So to do that, you have to change the megahertz and watch the LED. And with the pre-select, tune for maximum noise. I want to go to upper sideband. Now that was some FT8, so we'll just put the laptop on and see what signals we can pick up. So this is FT8 on 20 meters on 14074. We'll now try 15 meters. Fortunately, that's quite easy to change the frequency for. We don't need to change the main tuning knob. We just need to adjust the megahertz. So instead of 14, it needs to be 21. And then we adjust the pre-selector for a peak, and you can hear it there. So that's 15 meters FT8.
عدد 20 إذا من ثمارهم تعرفونه. إذا كان لدى الله كنيسة على الأرض اليوم
Chokes as well to stop, make sure no noise can come in through the power. The shed's been pretty good today. It's been very quiet today. It's been excellent. So
was your school like there at primary school?
Well, primary school, was Garima Public. You had to have 25 children to keep the school open. And I was mostly the only one in my class. In a sense, I had the classroom to myself because I was the only one. You know, people came and went a couple of years. When one person stayed for a year or two.
Head to ENS and explore the Electrolux innovations. These include Air Fry Plus, perfect for cooking healthy fried food without the oil. There is power in the name of Jesus. No matter who they follow.
A quick look inside the FRG-7. On the left is the receiver's front end, or at least that's what it looks like, and on the right the IF and audio. The variable capacitor on the left is the frequency selector, with that on the right being the band change. Here on the right is the IF and audio section, a crystal filter, that's a heatsink which is probably for the audio IC that drives the speaker. Not a lot underneath, but it does mean that the circuit boards are accessible on both sides, aiding troubleshooting.
Today we're forecast to be 16 centigrade during the peak of the day, and I don't think it's quite reached that, and as a consequence I've got a heater here in the shack with me. Papa Delta 2, Bravo Alpha, Victor Kilo 3, Foxtrot, Romeo, Charlie.
C plus, 50% chance of shower. Chance of a thunderstorm in the morning. Bateman, coast, $1 to Montague.
Storms are missing a great deal of character these days because all of the characteristics that allowed you to recognise another fellow's CW signal or another station's phone signal, such as drift or chirp or warble or a buzz, and their old gear or hungry gear, all of that's pretty much disappeared, and everyone except for mainly boat anchor operators, we all find the same, don't we? So I think I'm nostalgic for the days when we're all kind of drifting and chirping around. Mind you, I wouldn't want to go back to them.
All very interesting. Something I can do with this rig and also with the 7300, and I imagine the 7610 is the same.
So I to you, Russ, W8, a BO's there to take it in the group, VK6KJ, go ahead.
That's my look at the Yaesu FRG-7 receiver, a popular receiver from the late 1970s, and one where many shortwave listeners got their taste of what shortwave sounded like on a really good receiver. It's not quite up to today's standards with selectivity on SSB, but it does have very good audio reproduction, making it great for broadcast listening. A later video will describe the FRG-7's Wadley loop in a lot more detail. That will reveal the secrets of how the FRG-7 gets its good frequency stability and dial resolution. Don't miss it, you'll see it in a few days to a week.